I remember when I was working on my bachelor's degree, I didn't have any kids. I was really young, and I thought this is the most important thing, the most right thing that I can do with my time. And I worked really hard on it. And now it's like 12 years later. I am in my 30s, and or maybe it's been longer than that actually. Okay. Well, anyway, point is, I just I thought it was so important, and I put all this work and time and effort into it, and at the end of my life you would think that I would think that that was this major accomplishment, and it was. It was something I worked on single-mindedly for about 4 years, and even before that, preparing, in high school or middle school or whatever, before you begin, before you go to an actual university and live on campus. But at the end of the day, I'm realizing in my 30s, it's really not um, as valuable as I thought it was going to be. And I don't just mean economically, I just mean in my life, in the grand scheme of things. Like, how important was that really compared to having my kids? It's doesn't, each one of my children raised to adulthood is going to be a much more valuable accomplishment to me. And there are other things too that I just thought were so important, like my waist size and the places that I've traveled to and the GPA that goes along with the degree, and just the things that you can say that you've accomplished, tangibly. But I think it's important to know that even though there's something that you think is really, really important to accomplish, and you work so hard on it and you sacrifice everything for a time period in your life to achieve it, later on, 10, 15 years down the line, when you look back, you can realize it wasn't actually that important. But what was important is how I conducted myself during that time period. And that's what I reflect on the most. I don't really reflect on as much how impressed I am with myself for the equations that I could solve, and the course load that I could handle, and how I impressed my professors. Or it's more like I think back on those like conversations where I wish I had said something different. Some people will say, "Oh, I'm above worrying about that stuff." Well, good for you, but I think it is important to reflect back and improve. How can you become more loving? Like, how could I have been in on a lot of times the situation, the conversation that I did not like wouldn't have come about had I just been living a more godly life anyway. Not that I was a heathen. I, I've always been a very straight-laced person, but we all fall short of the glory of God, And so I just wish that I had been less focused on worldly stuff, like accomplishments that I could touch and feel and talk about, versus internally, am I becoming the most loving person that I can be? I think that not only is that a great accomplishment all throughout your life, and at the end of your life, you can look back on that as a great accomplishment, the greatest possible accomplishment, really. All of the other stuff is just kind of leaves on a tree. It's just the leaves. But you have to have that tree, that history. The trunk is like this historical line of who were you though? Like, what fruits were you producing? What kind of tree are you? And if you're the kind that's producing good fruit, you're somebody who's been loving throughout your whole life. It doesn't matter if you're working on your PhD in neuroscience, or if you were serving soup in a food bank, or if you were swimming in a lake, or if you were staying at home being a mom, or if you're out there being an engineer, making airplanes, or whatever. Like, it's whatever you're doing, even in the small conversations. Did you smile and show somebody Jesus? Were you being the hands and feet of Jesus? Were you, you know, just being as loving as you can be. And it's not just for other people as well, it's also for yourself, because when you are a loving person and instead of a bitter person, you can accept hardships more easily. You have the humility to expect hardships as well. And having more compassion for other people definitely makes you more grateful for what you have. Just being a more loving person is better for yourself, for your whole internal world. And no matter what's going on in your external world, if your internal world is rotten and not going well, there's no amount of money or no amount of comforts or amenities or success that can ever make you feel good. If your internal world can't feel good, you know? So that's what I'm going to focus on as my new goal, is how to be loving. Because I've run out of worldly goals. I ran out of worldly goals a long time ago, and then I've been obsessed with how to be the perfect mom. But that's putting too much pressure on my kids, you know? And after they turn 18 or become adults and move out and have their own lives, I have all boys. You know, I don't really expect them to want to spend time with me once they're adults. You know, they're gonna go live their own lives and have their own wives, and their wives will be their focus. And what am I gonna do for all those years? Like, I really hope that I'm a loving person and not bitter. And I hope that while they are kids, I'm creating a good childhood for them, you know, which again isn't about the toys or the amenities or the comforts as much as it's about the love that I give to them, that foundation I give them, and that the way that they feel. Do they feel safe? You know, do they feel like they have a nice, secure foundation? You know, even if there are trials in people's lives, it can be good for them, but it's more about, like, do you have the resilience to handle those trials that come, because you know that you're loved, and you know that life is worth living, and you know people love you, and that you matter, and you're significant, and therefore your pain and suffering has meaning, and you're not alone in it, and it matters, and there's hope and a reason to keep going when things get hard, you know. The flip side of that is to have the opposite of all those things, you know. If you have parents that treat you like you're not loved, then all of those things, the opposite end of the spectrum, can be your reality, and that's very hard to make up for in adulthood. That's that gap that is very difficult to fulfill. Even if you have God, that gap is very difficult to fulfill if you didn't feel like you were loved and securely loved by your own parents, and you're just kind of floating out like an astronaut in space, detached from the ship. It's like, whoa, am I gonna float in space forever? You know, you need to have that secure attachment, and it's very hard to, there's no amount of like affirmations that are gonna make you feel all better about yourself and fix your internal world, you know. And it doesn't, like, a lot of people use this chip on their shoulder to like drive them, and that's what's happened in my life, you know. I've been driven, and I have accomplished a lot, you know. I could brag on and on, but the thing is that it's like just becoming more and more apparent that no matter what I have, no matter how privileged I am, it appears I cannot enjoy it if I am not thinking about other people and being loving towards other people. You know, I don't have that foundation that I should have had in childhood because I was really neglected. And I didn't deserve to be, obviously, but it doesn't matter if you know that rationally, that no little kid deserves to be neglected. They didn't do anything wrong, obviously, right? But it doesn't matter if whether it's rational or not. It's something that is hardwired into your nervous system even. So No matter how much you accomplish, you might never feel worthy enough, and no matter how much comfort you have, you might never feel comfortable. It's like, no matter how many times or how many people love you even and say that they love you in your adulthood, no matter what you cultivate socially, it seems you can't really believe that you're loved. You can't really believe it. And so you can't really get that filled, you know? And I don't think I'm alone in this. Otherwise I wouldn't be posting it on YouTube. I think it's really common, especially for people in my generation, where we were kind of the first generation with, where we didn't have a nuclear family. We had split up households, blended families, and I know that the cultural trend is that we're supposed to act like blended families are fine and there's no problem with that, but I lived through it as the kid. Didn't go well. It went terribly, terribly, both on my mom's side and my dad's side. Multiple partners, misery with each one. It was not good. And there are so many psychological underpinnings that I could talk about that I think neither one of my parents understand, and a lot of their partners didn't understand, because they are from a generation where all of their parents were married their entire lives, and so they can't even begin to understand what it's like. And so anyway, I just think that if we're looking for a way out of this, I think it's important, one of the most important things is not to become bitter and dwell and become bitter. But also I've been on this journey for a long time of forgiveness, enforcing forgiveness, and that's surely a good thing. I don't regret that at all. I think it's really important. But at the same time, it's actually not enough to say that you forgive everybody and really feel that you forgive everybody and act like you forgive everybody. It's actually not enough. You have to become a very loving person and not bitter. And if you're from a place of privilege, and you most likely are if you live in the United States or a country similar in living standards, you are privileged. And you can always look at, oh, how does the average person live today? Or how did the average person live 200 years ago? And realize how privileged you are. I mean, the average person lives better than any king or queen lived 200 years ago, just because our technology and a lot of things are so much better. We have so many more accommodations in modern times. But I mean, pain medicine, you know, you have a sore tooth or a sore anything, you can actually be relieved of that. That wasn't true a few hundred years ago. Not true for everybody, so. Anyway, yeah, I think the way out of it is just to become a very loving person, because like I've said before in other videos, when you become really loving, that comes with being humble, because you have more compassion towards other people. You're seeing other people, you're having empathy for other people, realizing other people's pain, and then in turn you realize how good you actually have it, even if you are also in pain. But also, I think light and love within yourself can't exist at the same time as darkness and bitterness and hate and things. You know, that stuff gets burned away the more loving you are. So it's important to fill your eyes with good things, loving things, and the mouth speaks the abundance of the heart. So you'll know if you're, you know, that's a good measure of how loving you actually are, what comes out of your mouth. The mouth speaks the abundance of the heart, so that's what's inside you coming out. So If you're speaking a lot of loving things, that's a good measure. And if you're not, then maybe examine that, you know, because like I've said before, it's not just affecting other people, it's also affecting your internal world, and it's not just affecting you, it affects others, and it goes on for eternity. And if you believe in God, or whether you believe in God or not, what we bind on earth, we bind in heaven. And we lay up treasures for ourselves in heaven while we're here on earth. So it's important, because being a loving person, you know, God is love. By the way, a lot of people think sexual preference is love, or attraction to another person or a bond with another person is love. That's not it. God is love. It's you're being willing to sacrifice yourself for somebody else, and having compassion on other people, giving to other people, taking from yourself to give from somebody else, you know, even if, you know, you're starving, you split what you have with someone else who's also starving, you know. Even though it's cold outside, you give another person your coat when they don't have one. Like, that's love. That's self-sacrificing. You know, I don't like to get up in the middle of the night to feed my kids. It sucks, okay? Or deal with whatever they need. I hate getting up in the middle of the night, and I nurse my kids as well, so yeah. But I always do it. I always do it because I love them. So, because I don't want them to be uncomfortable. I'm not gonna be okay with hearing them cry, or even just knowing that they're in there quietly, you know, uncomfortable. I'm gonna go help them. So anyway, that's an example of love, and just also not being bitter about it, you know, but being thankful that you have an opportunity to do that, being thankful that you have an opportunity to love, you know, and also be grateful for having opportunities to forgive when people wrong you, you know. Just sometimes that's really helped me with forgiveness, is just thinking, okay, this person has wronged me in a way that it doesn't matter how sorry they are, it doesn't matter if they spend their whole life trying to make up for it, there's nothing they can do. This is multiple people, nothing they can ever do to make up for it. They cannot repay this debt. But every person on earth is in that position with Jesus. We can't repay the debt of being forgiven for our sins and being eternally with God, even if we didn't deserve it. So that's a really powerful tool for forgiveness. Anyway, I hope that this helped somebody. You know, don't worry about where you are financially. Just worry about where you are with how loving you are, and that can really transform you, and you can end up being the most privileged person on the planet if you're the most loving person on the planet, because no comforts in the world. What you know, what good is it if a man gains the whole world but loses his soul? Like, you can't enjoy it. You can't enjoy what you have, okay? And that's not what that Bible verse completely means, because we're talking about eternity with that verse. But even here on earth, what good is it to have all the comforts in the world if you can't enjoy it because you're bitter?